You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering New York. So, Kenzie.
Yes, Lowen.
Let's get scary.
I'm bad. Oh my God.
Roy's tummy is making all sorts of noises today. I don't know what's going on. Oh my God. It's a good thing he's cute.
I think he has cat in his stomach.
I think so. Who did we see on Tuesday?
We saw Loveless.
We got to see them live.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
And it was literally the best venue ever.
Oh my God, so much fun.
Union Stage in DC. It's so small.
It is so great.
We were like 5 feet away from them.
We were so close. So close. So if you're listening to this, Dylan and Julian, I was the blonde behind the hot dogs.
And we got to take a picture with Dylan, and he was amazing, and it was just so amazing.
I screamed at Julian when I saw him walking in the street that I loved him. He did not say he loves me back, but he was trying to stay incognito, so I understand.
We understand.
I could hear him telepathically.
Telepathically?
Yeah, telepathically that he reciprocates the love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm?
I think so. You're wearing your Loveless shirt. Cute.
And they reposted us.
Oh, yeah!
I put the picture of us meeting Dylan, who's the guitarist, on our Instagram. And I'm like, ooh, it's not private. Tee.
That was so cool.
So free advertisement for all their fans.
And then also just so cool.
So if you also are a Loveless fan and you're new, welcome.
Yes.
If you are Loveless, double welcome.
Welcome. Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about New York.
I don't think we have anything else to talk about, so you just want to jump on it?
Because we saw each other already.
Yeah, that's true. 2 days ago.
Yeah. So we already skipped that whole process. I'm excited to do New York.
Yeah.
My family's from New York, as I just went through my family tree with you.
Yes.
And all the people that are from New York that I know.
Because Mackenzie wanted to make sure she was native enough to be able to use a New York accent.
I have New York heritage in my blood.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And when, everyone says, West Coast or East Coast, I'm like, fucking East Coast. I find New York City a far better city than Los Angeles.
I can't compare. I have only been to New York.
I mean, I've kind of been to Los Angeles for like 2.5 seconds, and I just didn't enjoy myself. It's so expensive.
The worst 2.5 seconds ever.
Well, and it's like, okay, it bothers me that people in a major metropolitan city all have cars.
Why?
Because that's what makes the traffic even outside of the city even worse.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people who live in DC and work in DC, they don't have a car.
I work with people, we're right outside of DC, who don't have a car.
Right.
They just metro and take the little shuttle.
Yeah, like if you can get to a metro, then great.
Right.
You can go outside the city even. And I'm like, if I lived in the city, I would not have a car.
No.
Like, absolutely not. That's a pain in the ass.
Oh my God, yes. And like in DC, we have friends who live there. Just for parking alone per month is like $250.
It's insane.
Like on top of your already insane rent.
Right.
Yeah. No.
And people in New York, hardly anybody has a car.
Right.
Who definitely lives in the city, and the city's huge.
Yeah.
And everyone in California and Los Angeles, they all have a fucking car.
Is LA like a place you can walk around as easily as New York?
I don't know.
Oh.
I have no idea.
Let us know.
Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe like LA is more spaced out. I don't know.
I've never been.
I'm just loyal to the East Coast because that's where we're from.
Yeah.
We've been to New York a bunch.
Yeah. When Joe and I most recently went back in February, one of the days we were there, we walked over 10 miles.
I remember once when we went on one of our trips to New York, and I bought those really, really cute black boots. And we decided this would be a good idea to wear around New York City.
A great time to break them in.
Yes. Brand new, just bought them. Let's go wear them right this second.
Oh my God.
I wanted to die.
That's just like the episode of Friends where Monica bought the black boots, and every time she wore them, she was like, I'm going to die.
Yeah, that was me. I wanted to die. So, lesson learned.
And now I feel like your feet are numb from everything. Mackenzie's the one friend of yours who will wear like 5-inch heels. Like you go out and you know you're going to be walking a lot. 5-inch heels.
Without
a doubt.
Because I buy comfortable heels that I know that I can stand around and walk in that won't hurt my feet.
Wild.
It's not wild if you just buy smart. Like, I'm not wearing fucking stilettos everywhere. I would die.
They look like stilettos.
No, they're like, they got a little platform and they're like a thicker heel, which gives you more balance.
No,
and
I remember this one time when we went out into Arlington. It was like a Thursday night. I worked at my old job because I remember thinking about how early I had to wake up.
Okay, but that's different.
Those were heels, and we had to walk a distance.
Well, okay, but the problem with those is that the cover part, my feet were sliding. And so it was giving me blisters on top of my feet.
Ah.
But yeah, no, for the most part, like I will never be that person who takes their shoes off at a wedding. No.
Oh, see, I'm going to a wedding this weekend and next weekend. And I'm the kind of person who will bring like, you know, those foldable shoes, like they roll up.
Bringing shoes? Yes.
Oh, you mean like people go barefoot? Oh.
I will jump around in those things.
Oh, I think actually just kidding. I was barefoot for part of my wedding.
I almost brought heels to your wedding.
And then I told her she wasn't allowed to. I'm 5'2". Mackenzie, how tall are you?
5'5".
So I was wearing heels that were like, they were actually really way too tall. They were like 5-inch heels. But so I was like, or maybe 4-inch heels. They were very high. So I was like up there. But I told Mackenzie, I said, if you also wear heels, you will be towering above me. So I said, so no heels allowed. So no one was allowed to wear heels. Well, I said she could wear little heels. And she said, no. So that's why she got no heels.
A minimum of 3 inches.
Yeah, no.
That's probably why my feet are so fucked up.
Yeah, actually. The wedding I'm in next weekend, I have heels and they're like this big.
That's it?
That's like an inch or two. Yeah.
Oy.
Well, because I'm going to be wearing them for a long time and they have to match the dress and all that stuff.
I will take you shoe shopping. Good Lord. You deprived child. There's so much to teach you. I love shoe shopping.
So honored to have you as a best friend.
Yes, of course. It's what I do for the people.
Yeah. New York.
One time, we were on a cruise. We left from New York. There's a point to the story.
Okay.
With New York. And, you know, because mom is from Long Island, I perfected my New York accent.
Oh, God.
And so there's like a rhyme, I guess.
Okay.
That, you know, I would have fun saying because it's like all the, you know, like coffee, dog, walk, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were with this group of people from New York City. I don't remember where. And I did it for them. And they were all very impressed.
Okay. Are you going to do it for us?
Maybe later on, spur of the moment, because now I'm starting to get stage fright.
Oh, my God.
It's just in front of you, like subconsciously. I know other people are going to hear this.
Oh, my God.
So, you know, it'll peek through when like I feel like no one's paying attention.
We'll feel it at some point. Yeah. When no one's paying attention to the podcast that you have to listen to. Okay.
Well, when they've forgotten that I said I was going to do it. I'll just
okay.
Like kind of like break out into song like a musical. Okay. So the first people arrived in New York around 10,000 BC. The original name, I knew this. The original name of New York was New Amsterdam. I knew that.
Wow.
Yeah. There are over 800 languages spoken in New York City, making it the most diverse city in the world.
All right, name them all.
What?
Just kidding.
You're making me cry.
We got new lanyards today at work. And the guy who sits behind me has been working on these for months, like months and months and months, like designing it, all that stuff, ordering it, everything.
OMG, that would be me.
And so he started, like, I saw the very first sketches that he did, and we finally got them today. And so for a moment, I wanted to say, hey, did you know one of the words is spelled wrong? It's not. Everything is completely beautiful and they're amazing. But I wanted to say it. But then he looked really stressed handing them out. So I was like, never mind.
No.
But yeah, nothing is wrong on them. They are really, really awesome, actually. The little clippy part.
Mom is a bully.
That little clippy part is red. So it's not your typical black, like the part that clips on and off for the badges. Yeah, it's red, which is so cool.
My lanyard is an otter.
Oh. My other one had sunflowers, but now I'm switching to this one because it's
You're
so
being
cool.
supportive.
I am being supportive.
So, English is one of the languages.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Dead Horse Bay is a real place in New York. It had once become home to a horse rendering plant, then served as a landfill for the city. So the shores are now covered in trash and horse bones. That's fucking freaky.
I know.
Don't like that.
No, not at all.
The gates of hell are believed to be located in the city of Troy at the Forest Park Cemetery, but locals know this area as Pine Woods. Trespassing into this cemetery is illegal, but those who have gone in have found decapitated angel statues and other headless statues. Some have even claimed to see these statues, bleeding from their necks.
Mm-hmm.
There have also been reports of people's faces, getting scratched while inside.
Yeah, not a place I'd want to go.
There's also a Hellgate Bridge. The bridge goes over the East River into New York City. It is
It's haunted.
It's haunted by ghostly trains that carry the souls of the dead. Those souls are either the people who drowned in the river or had their bodies dumped in it. That's kind of cool. We can all, talk about how you ended up there.
How'd you end up here, Paul? Oh, my body was dumped. How about you? Oh, I drowned.
Can you imagine being a spirit and knowing who your killer is, but you can't do anything because...
Isn't that like the book or the movie, The Lovely Bones?
I have no idea.
I haven't finished reading it, but she gets killed. I don't actually know anything about it. I just know she gets killed, and then she can see her killer, walking around, she's, looking down on him. I don't know how it ends or anything, but...
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, that would suck.
It would suck. Montauk is the inspiration for Stranger Things. It is said to, quote, have been the site of a top-secret black book experiments in the 1960s through the 1980s that involved alien contact, psychic experiments with children, and even time travel. A man named Preston Nichols was an electrical engineer here and said the facility would kidnap children.
What?
If I was someone who actually worked there and there was these conspiracy theories going around, I would 100% be oh yeah, we definitely we kidnapped kids. There was this whole thing.
Oh.
I would fuck with people so hard.
Unless they were true.
Well, right, but it's my whole thing. People know, the government knows that everyone's going to label them as crazy and not believe them. So their job is done. They have turned society against those people. So society shuns them themselves, and the government doesn't have to step in and do anything. So they would kidnap children and turn them into psychic soldiers using technology that they got from alien spacecrafts. And yet we are still taking away women's rights. That's how you know, some of this shit is got to be bullshit, because I'm the crap that we're dealing with right now, no way could we have these technological advances and then be this far behind in human rights. I still have a theory that aliens pass Earth and they're ooh, no, fuck that.
Lock the doors.
Not that. Nichols says that he has interacted with 3 different alien species at Camp Hero. He also claimed that the research teams there ripped a hole in space-time in 1983.
So yeah, kind of the whole premise of Stranger Things. You have to watch it. It's not scary. It's not scary.
I watched the first episode. And there were definitely parts that freaked me out.
Oh my God. I think you'll be okay.
The shit on the walls, I couldn't do that. It was freaky.
Oh, what part on the walls?
I don't know. It looked like, I don't know if someone's hand went through something. Something was happening in the walls.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't in the walls. It was in the upside down.
Whatever. It was not making the walls do things it shouldn't. It was freaky.
It's so good.
Okay. I believe people, and I wish that I wasn't such a scaredy cat, but anything.
I feel that's a great ease into it. No, in all honesty.
I disagree. I already tried. No. No. I even started to get nervous with Doctor Who with some of those episodes.
Oh my God.
They have these statue ones. Oh my God, that shit freaks me the fuck out.
Ooh, statues are creepy.
Well, because if you look at them, they'll freeze. But then when you stop looking at them,
they move.
They move.
Ew.
And then you turn again. Oh my God. Ugh. I don't like it. So, not so surprisingly, New York City is the home to the first pizzeria in the United States.
Yum.
New York pizza.
God bless.
Fire. A lot of presidents are from New York. Sylvester Stallone was from... Stallion? was from New York City, as was Tupac. That's not how you spell his name.
That's how it was in the article that I read. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that's not right. There we go.
She had Tupac.
I didn't read these notes afterwards. And then I was looking at it, I was like before you read, I was like, that's wrong.
Priscilla Presley was also from New York. To end the notes with a Michael Scott quote, New York, city so nice, they named it twice. Manhattan is the other name.
For all the Office fans.
Mm.
It's funny.
Okay.
Mackenzie.
What you talking about, Willis? All
right. Today I'm going to talk about the real Amityville Horror. Okay. 112 Ocean Avenue was a quaint little 5-bedroom, 3.5-bathroom house that sat in a small town of Long Island, New York.
Ooh, what town?
Amityville.
Oh.
I can't believe you.
I didn't know that was like the actual name of the town. I thought it was like, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. I knew it was something scary, but I thought someone just gave it that name. I didn't realize this was an actual place.
Yeah, Amityville, New York.
I just started with that. You should have given context.
I really think every other person will be like, oh yeah, Amityville.
I don't watch scary things. Didn't know.
So this house in Amityville would go on to become the prime star in a grisly murder and go on to inspire a horror movie known by the name of the Amityville Horror.
See, it's the name of a movie. How am I supposed to know that that was the name of the town?
I don't know.
Because why would I ever watch the movie?
I don't know. So tonight I will tell you about the DeFeo family, the Lutz family, and the events that inspired a horror movie. So we'll start with the DeFeo family. In the early morning hours of November 13th, 1973, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked the halls of his family's Amityville home with nothing but a .35 caliber rifle. He would use that rifle to murder his entire family.
What?
Parents Louise and Ronald DeFeo Sr., his 18-year-old sister Dawn, 13-year-old sister Allison, 12-year-old brother Mark, and 9-year-old brother John Matthew.
Why?
Oh, I will get to it. Many believe that it was the house that influenced Ronald DeFeo to kill his family. The rumors of him saying that there was a malevolent force that were controlling his actions. But a look at his childhood and life growing up could help shed some light on that.
Okay.
Okay. From the outside looking in, the DeFeo family was described by neighbors as being a nice and normal family. They had great relationships with their neighbors and were known as being kind and loving, always willing to offer a helping hand when needed.
Mm-hmm.
One story a neighbor told was how if she ever needed a ride to work, the DeFeo family was always willing to drive her to work. The family consisted of Ronald DeFeo Sr., Louise DeFeo, and their 5 children, Ronald Jr., Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. They lived in a nice part of Long Island called Amityville. And their house was...
You should have started with that.
Their house was very nice. It was a Dutch colonial house that had a swimming pool and was near a boat dock.
Nice.
So just sounds incredible.
It does.
The inside was equally as nice, with portraits of the family hanging on the walls. The life inside of those walls was very different. What?
Oh, I heard something.
Like outside?
I don't know.
Okay. So, Ronald Sr. worked at and managed an auto dealership, the Brigante Carl Buick dealership. This dealership was actually owned by his father-in-law, Michael Brigante, Louisa's father. Ronald Sr. didn't make a ton of money working here, but they were still pretty well off. But a good deal of their money had come from his father-in-law. Not only did he employ his son-in-law and give him money for that, but he also purchased their home for the family, which they're grateful for. It allowed them to move out of their small Brooklyn apartment. So the 7 of them are finally in a house, not an apartment.
Got it.
He also gave Ronald Sr. $50,000 to have those family portraits that hung around the house painted.
Wow.
Yeah. So about the family. Ronald Sr., Big Ronnie, was reportedly a very abusive and violent man. And unfortunately, a lot of that anger and violence would be taken out on their oldest son, Ronald Jr., who actually went by the nickname Butch.
Oh.
Ronald Jr., Butch, was born on September 26, 1951 in Brooklyn, New York. So we're like in the 50s, 60s-ish. And Louise wasn't much better, or Lois, I don't really know.
Probably Louise.
Yeah, wasn't much better, reportedly being a very passive mother to Butch and his siblings. And things weren't much better outside of the house for Ronald Jr., who I'll call him pretty much Ronald and Butch throughout the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was overweight, so he was constantly bullied at school, being called awful names like Pork Chop and the Blob.
Aww.
Kids are so mean.
Oh my God, you have no idea.
Oh my God. He was also picked on because he never stood up for himself. Something his father tried to tell him he needed to do. That he needed to stand up for himself at school, but if he did that at home, not good.
Not good.
This troubling childhood eventually led Ronald down a road of substance and alcohol abuse. This abuse, primarily the amphetamines, LSD, and heroin, helped Ronald lose a lot of his weight, but he became reliant on these drugs. He also started to become dependent on alcohol as well, so the drugs and alcohol soon became his only coping mechanism for the abuse that he was still facing at home. The drug and alcohol use mixed with the daily abuse led to Ronald having a lot of rage, and eventually this rage led to him being expelled from school. The rage got so bad that he would constantly lash out at his dad, these arguments usually ending in blows. And once, he even threatened his father with a gun. So his parents had gotten into a big fight one night, and Ronald stormed in to try to stop it with a 12-gauge shotgun in hand.
Uh-oh.
He even pointed the gun at his father, yelled, "Leave that woman alone. I'm going to kill you, you fat fuck. That is it," and pulled the trigger, point blank.
Okay.
But the gun malfunctioned.
Oh, no.
He slowly turned away from his shocked father and calmly walked out of the room.
Uh-oh.
But that wasn't an isolated incident. There was another instance when Ronald and a friend went on a hunting trip. On this trip, Ronald threatened his friend with a rifle, aiming at his friend and staring while his friend's face turned white. His friend then turned and fled. Ronald calmly lowered his gun. Then later that day, Ronald acted as though nothing had happened, even asking his friend why he left so soon.
What?
Mm-hmm. So clearly he's struggling a lot in life, so his parents decided to try to help him out a bit. So first they sent him to a therapist, hoping that this would help him figure out, work through his anger, addictions, come out better on the other side. But he held a passive-aggressive stance with the therapist and didn't believe he needed help, so he didn't take it. Eventually, he just stopped going altogether. His parents also thought that maybe having him close to home would help, so they let him live at home with them. And not only that, but they provided him with, one, a weekly stipend, and along with that stipend, if he ever asked for money, they would just give him whatever he needed.
Okay.
So very much enabling.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to hold down a job on his own, so his father let him work at his mechanic shop for some extra money and some responsibility. But Ronald rarely showed up, and when he did, he wouldn't do any work and would leave early.
Oh, no.
No wonder he couldn't hold down a job.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't help much, as Ronald spent most of his time doing drugs and drinking, getting into fights, and constantly arguing with his parents. In 1974, a big incident occurred with him. So he felt like he wasn't receiving a good enough salary at work, a place he didn't show up to half the time, so he felt he deserved more money.
Okay.
Like, sure, okay. So anywho, he decides that he was owed more, so he started to come up with a plan for how he could embezzle money from the company that his grandfather owned. Yep. Even though his parents gave him anything he asked for, they bought him a car when he was younger, they bought him a boat so he could have fun on the lake, like, they got him everything he wanted, and he's still like, I need to steal this money. In late October 1974, Ronald had the important job of taking and depositing $20,000 to the bank. Well, he wanted the money. So he and a friend of his devised a plan to execute a mock robbery in which they would split the money evenly in the end. He and his friend left the dealership to head to the bank at 12:30 this one day. They were gone for 2 hours, and when they finally returned back to the dealership, they reported that they had been robbed at gunpoint while they had been stopped at a red light. Ronald Sr., Big Ronnie, was at the dealership when Ronald had returned. He heard about Ronald being robbed at gunpoint. At this, his father exploded with rage at the employee who had sent Ronald to deposit the money, because it's the employee's fault, obviously,
Right.
for putting his son in such a dangerous situation.
Oh, my God.
But sure enough, with a robbery that large, the police were immediately called and came to question Ronald about what happened and about him being robbed. Remember.
I say rebel.
And remember, they think he's the victim here. Like, they
Right.
think he's this traumatic experience being robbed at gunpoint.
Sure.
Instead of just calmly answering the officer's questions, easily pulling this off, he became tense, irritable, then enraged with the police. This struck the officers as odd, that maybe Ronald was lying, so instead of focusing on the robbery, they shifted their focus to the 2 hours that he was gone. They started asking things like, well, if you had just been robbed, why were you gone for 2 hours? Why didn't you come straight back to the shop? Why didn't you go to the cops? Well, Ronald didn't like this either. He began yelling and cussing at the officers, banging on the hood of a car at the dealership to truly express his rage. I know. The police realized they weren't getting anywhere, so they eventually asked Ronald to come down to the police station to look at a lineup of possible suspects. They scheduled it for the next day, and Ronald agreed. But right at the last moment, he decided not to go. All of his weird behavior and kind of outbursts led his father to think that maybe Ronald, his son, had committed the robbery. He said some things just weren't lining up. So Big Ronnie went back to Ronald to ask all about the whole situation, primarily why he wasn't cooperating with the police. This turned heated, surprise, surprise, with Big Roddy yelling at his son saying, "You've got the devil on your back." Ronald screamed back, "You fat prick, I'll kill you," before running to his car and speeding off into the night.
Oh my.
So let's go back to the day that this horrible event took place.
Okay.
Okay. The one I talked about from the beginning.
Okay.
It was November 12th, 1974, and Ronald had left work and headed to a bar. At the time, the bar was known as Henry's. It was on the corner of Merrick Road and Ocean Avenue. There's a place on Ocean Avenue. Every time I was doing my notes this week, I would read Ocean Avenue, stuck in my head the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So after a bit, he finally left and headed back home in the early hours. It was in these early hours of technically November 13th that he proceeded to murder his entire family. It was that night that he knew what he wanted to do, the night he was going to follow through with this plan of his. He took his .35 caliber Marlin rifle from his gun closet and made his way to his parents' bedroom. He quietly pushed open the door where he saw the two of them sleeping. He moved to the foot of their bed and for just a moment watched them.
Ew.
Then without hesitation, he lifted the rifle, shouldered it, and pulled the trigger. The first shot hit his father in the back, with a second piercing the base of his father's skull. His mother was roused awake by this and only had a few seconds to react to what her son was doing before Ronald shot his mother twice as well. He then moved on to the room that his two younger brothers shared. He used one bullet on each of them. Finally, he moved to his sister's room. He also used one bullet on each of his sisters as well. The only noises that could be heard that night was the family dog Shaggy barking violently outside.
Mm.
After the gruesome murders, Ronald calmly took a shower, trimmed his beard, and got dressed for work. Oh, and he gathered up any incriminating evidence.
Sure.
He headed to work like he normally would, taking the evidence with him.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped at a storm drain in Brooklyn, where he tossed everything, including the gun, down the drain. Then he continued on his way to work, where he worked with his dad, like I mentioned.
Right.
He arrived to work calmly at 6 a.m. After a bit of time, when his father didn't show up for work, Ronald acted just as confused and surprised as everyone else. He even went as far as to call his dad to check in on him. But he, of course, got no answer. Duh. As the day went on, Ronald had had enough, so he left and instead went to spend the rest of the day with some of his friends. Yes. He first called his girlfriend, Sherry Klein, to let
He
her...
has a girlfriend?
I know, I read that. I was like, what?
What kind of... Okay.
So he called up Sherry Klein, his girlfriend, to let her know that he was off work early and he wanted to come see her. Sherry was 19 years old and was a popular waitress at one of the bars that Ronald frequented. He arrived at her place around 1:30 p.m. As they were talking, he mentioned that he had tried to call his family and no one had answered, which he had found weird because he had driven by their house earlier and all of the cars were still in the driveway. He even called from her phone, again, to show her that they weren't answering, which was just very weird. But unconcerned, Ronald took Sherry out shopping that afternoon. Then the two went to hang out with another friend, Bobby Kelsky. Ronald told Bobby the same story about not being able to reach his family, but still unconcerned, he spent the rest of the evening hanging out with friends, drinking, and doing the occasional heroin.
Right.
Doing a drug.
Yes.
It was about 6 p.m. when Ronald showed up at Henry's, the bar. He saw his buddy Bobby and told him that he felt something was wrong. He said the cars were still in the driveway and he wasn't able to get into the house. Like, it was locked. He didn't have a key. He wondered out loud if he would have to break a window to get into the house to see what was going on, with Bobby telling him to do what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So Ronald left the bar and headed home. But not long after that, in the early evening, Ronald ran back to the bar yelling, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." He told patrons at the bar that someone had shot his family and he needed help. A group of patrons went to the DeFeo house only to stumble upon the scene. Cops were immediately called by one of the men who went to the house first, named Joe Yeswit, at 6:35 p.m. This is how the call went. So I have the full 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
I condensed some parts of it because there's some parts where they're trying to spell his name and they're so stupid. Like, he had to spell his name probably 5 or 6 times. And I'm like, this is just going to annoy me.
My.
Okay. So right now it's going to alternate between operator and Joey.
Okay.
This is Suffolk County Police. May I help you? We have a shooting here. DeFeo? Sir, what is your name? Joey Yeswit? Then they go on to spell his name for a while. Finally, the operator says, WIT. Your phone number? I don't know if it's here. I don't have a phone here. Okay, where are you calling from? It's in Amityville. Call up the Amityville Police. It's right off Ocean Avenue in Amityville. Austin? Ocean Avenue. What the? Ocean Avenue? Off of where? It's right off Merrick Road. Ocean Avenue. Merrick Road. What's the problem, sir? It's a shooting. There's a shooting? Anybody hurt? Huh? Anybody hurt? Yeah, it's everybody's dead. What do you mean everybody's dead? I don't know what happened. Kid came running into the bar. He says everybody in the family was killed and we came down here. Hold on a second, sir. So now a police officer takes over the call.
Okay.
Police officer. Hello. What's your name? My name is Joe Yeswit. George Edwards? Joe Yeswit.
Oh my God.
How do you spell it? What? How many times do I have to tell you? Yeswit. And then he spells it out. Where are you at? I'm on Ocean Avenue. What number? So they go on to kind of talk about the number for a while. Finally, he says that he's in Amityville. They get on to the point that he's in Amityville. After a while. So the police officer goes, okay, now tell me what's wrong. I don't know. Guy came running to the bar. Guy came running in the bar and said his mother and father are shot. We ran down to his house and everybody in the house is shot. I don't know how long, So, what's the address of the house? Hold on. Let me look up the number. All right, hold on. 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville. And then they go on to say that it's outside of the city limits. Officer. Okay, what's your phone number? I don't have one. There's no number on the phone. All right, where are you calling from? Public phone? No, I'm calling right from the house because I don't see a number on the phone. You're at the house itself? Yeah. How many bodies are there? I think, I don't know. I think they said 4. There's 4? Yeah. All right, you stay right there at the house and I'll call the Amity Village Police Department and they'll come down. So that's the 911 call. I hope that wasn't too hard to follow. But I had to cut out so much.
In the house?
Yes. So they went into the house. So what happened was Ronald runs down to the bar, grabs all these patrons and said my parents have been shot. They end up at the house and they go into the house to kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
So they run up to the bedroom, see the 2 parents shot, see the 2 sons, run back downstairs, and he calls the cops.
Okay.
Because, they don't have cell phones.
Well, yeah.
So at this point, you kind of have to use the home phone, but it's just so weird.
It is very weird.
So the first officer on the scene, Officer Kenneth Golguski, arrived to find a group of men gathered on the front lawn. He also found Ronald in shock but sobbing uncontrollably. As Officer Golguski approached, Ronald told him, "My mother and father are dead." The Village of Amityville police entered the home and immediately went upstairs where they found Ronald's mom and dad and 2 brothers all dead and lying in a pool of their own blood. When they returned downstairs, one of the officers phoned the station to relay what they had found. Ronald was sitting in the kitchen at the time and heard the whole phone call. When the officer said they found 4 people, the parents and 2 brothers, Ronald informed them that he also had 2 sisters. Police tore back up the stairs and unfortunately also found his 2 sisters dead as well. All 6 family members had been found dead, positioned on their stomachs, lying face down, all in the same position, all shot with a rifle. Later, it was determined that the time of death was around 3:15 a.m. There had been no signs of struggle. It was also determined that there had been no signs of the family having been drugged, and the only sound neighbors heard that night was the family dog barking. Ronald was, of course, questioned, as he was the only surviving family member. When asked who he thought could have possibly done something like this, Ronald told authorities that it had been a mob hit on his family by a hitman named Louis Fellini. Ronald said that there had been a grudge of some kind between the man and his family over work that Ronald Sr. had done for him at the dealership. This claim was actually taken so seriously at the time that Ronald was taken to the police station for protection from the mob.
Oh, my.
Over the next few days, he actually slept at the police station on a cot that they had provided for him.
Already made a couple connections between our cases.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
While at the station, Ronald gave his written statement about what happened. So he claimed that he had been home all night the night before the killings.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't been able to sleep, so he stayed up until 2 a.m. watching Castle Keep on TV. I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
At 4 a.m., he finally decided to head to bed. All seemed normal and quiet in the house, but he did hear a toilet flush from the bathroom. So someone must have been awake if they had flushed the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't able to fall asleep, though, so he just decided to get ready and head into work. He then described the events of the day, how he left work early, hanging out with friends, all that stuff. Then he described how he hadn't been able to get in touch with his family and ended up breaking into his house through a kitchen window to check on them. Going upstairs was where he found his parents. After this statement, the police continued questioning Ronald about his suggestion that Fellini had been the killer. They wanted to see if they could find out any additional information about the so-called hitman. Ronald told them that Fellini had actually lived with them for some time previously and that during that time, he had helped Ronald and his father carve out a secret hiding spot for Senior to stash gems and cash.
What?
Then Fellini and Senior had had their argument about whatever had gone down at the dealership. So he leaves. Now there's this grudge. It was around this point that the police started to realize that some details of Ronald's story just weren't adding up.
Mm-hmm.
First, he said that he had been at work all morning and with friends all afternoon, so there was no way he could have murdered his family as he wasn't even home when the murders happened. Fair. But that is when police mentioned that it had been determined that his family had been killed in the early morning. So
yeah, you said 3:15.
Right. So well before he would have left for work. So this little alibi he has doesn't really add up anymore.
Right. I was literally just thinking that. I was like, how are you going to say that you were there and heard a bathroom flush
at 4 a.m.? So he's trying to put it that they're alive at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was this before he knew that the police knew what time?
No.
Ooh.
No.
They're doing something in one of the garages across the street.
Oh, yeah. She's been remodeling that like all week. So if you hear little bangs in the background, I apologize. We live in a small neighborhood. Okay, and so remember that hitman that Ronald had talked about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the police discovered that he was out of town, out of the state actually, when the murders were committed.
Oh. The bad guy actually has an alibi.
Right. They didn't tell Ronald they knew this.
Right.
But they knew this, which is why they're kind of piecing this all together. Like, something's just not making
adding
sense here. Police were also finally really starting to look at the physical evidence that they had from the crime scene as well. So a precursory check had been done of the house, obviously. They checked everything, checking to see what they can find. The rooms where the murders...
I want to cross my legs. Until my foot falls asleep. And I'll have to uncross them.
Naturally.
Okay.
So the rooms where the murders took place had been deeply searched. But Ronald's room had only gotten a quick little scan because he wasn't a murder victim, so there's no reason to really check his room.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But he got rid of everything... incriminating, so to speak.
Anything that would have had, like, I can't remember what it said. It was just like the gun, and I can't remember what else was found, but it was like not a lot of stuff.
But all the bodies were face down.
Yes.
And someone had to flip them over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because there's no way they would have all died in that position.
Right, that's what I thought. Just wanted to double check my facts.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, a big discovery was made on November 15th around 2:30 p.m. Detective John Sherville was doing one final sweep of the rooms in the DeFeo house. This time, he finally decided to deeply check Ronald's room. In Ronald's room, Detective Sherville found 2 cardboard boxes. One was labeled that it had contained a .22 caliber rifle and the other a .35 caliber rifle.
Uh-oh.
At this point in the investigation, they weren't sure what the murder weapon had been.
Okay.
So it was after arriving back at the police station that Sherville found out that what the murder weapon had been, a .35 caliber rifle.
Uh-oh.
He picked up the boxes. I was reading one of the somethings, and it said he picked up these boxes, and he was like, I don't know if these are going to be important. Like, let me just bring these to the police station just in case. Oh, that was what they needed.
How are you going to stage this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
go through all this evidence to make sure that there's nothing that can be tied back to you, but you, dumbass, keep the fucking box?
Right. He even got rid of the gun. But you kept the box.
This is your reminder that you do not still need that old iPhone box. You can throw it away. You will not need it anymore for any particular reason.
When Joe and I were moving out, like when we were living with my parents for that little bit of time, in the closet, I found just a stack of iPhone boxes because, like, I never wanted to throw them away.
Well, you should.
I know.
Throw your boxes away.
But I always think, what if I need it for something really small that I want it back? I don't know. This is the issue I have.
I can see that.
Yeah. I threw them away.
Okay, good.
So questioning of Ronald's friend, Bobby Kelsky, revealed that Ronald was a gun enthusiast and had staged the robbery, the one from earlier. So they're now finding out that robbery staged. With all of this evidence and the smoking gun of finding the rifle box, Ronald...
I have a good pun in mind, too.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Ronald was assumed involved somehow. He was woken up from his cot because he was at the station, and this is when he was read his rights. He tried to appear cooperative to the police and nonchalant to try to show that he wasn't responsible. He even started talking without having a lawyer present.
Stupid.
Because he didn't ask for a lawyer because he's like, oh, I'm innocent. At this point, his story started to change and morph as he continued to try to get himself out of the situation he was slowly putting himself further into.
Dig yourself a deeper hole.
The investigators would ask a question, and Ronald's answers would contradict what he had already said, putting himself at the house during the time of the murders over and over again.
Oh, no.
He eventually told the investigators yet another story.
Oh, God.
He told them that Louis Fellini, the police already knew he was out of town at this time.
Right.
So that guy came into his house and woke him up at 3:30 a.m. by putting a revolver to his head.
Now he woke him up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When he wasn't able to sleep and he was up till 4. But
right.
Yeah. He said that Fellini had an accomplice with him, and the two dragged him from room to room as he murdered all of Ronald's family, making him watch each execution. Ronald kept talking and said that after the murders and after Fellini left, he had gathered, then discarded evidence from the crime scene. So they're like, why did you clean up a crime scene that you weren't involved in?
This is like when my kids will try to, like, get out of whatever it is that I've just caught them doing. I'm like thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm more insulted that you lied or that you thought I would believe it.
Yeah, it's like, how stupid do you think I am?
Right. And I'm like here, and I'm like, you put so much thought into so many other things, except for, like, the major things.
The big thing. Right.
Too.
So the detectives kept pushing and eventually said to him, it didn't happen that way, did it? With his head in his hands, Ronald said, give me a minute. Butch, they were never there, were they? Flinny and the other guy were never there, said the detective. No, Butch finally confessed. It all happened so fast. Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast. Bingo. And with that, they got their confession.
Yeah.
Ronald DeFeo was officially arrested on November 15th, 1974 for the murder of his parents and his 4 siblings. His trial was set for October 14th, 1975, almost a whole year after the events had occurred. It's like 11 months. The prosecution was headed by Gerard Sullivan, assistant district attorney with Suffolk County. He had to start with a good opening statement. He had to paint Ronald in a light that he was nothing more than a methodical murderer, a cold-blooded killer. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he said.
Oh my God, you have the opening statement.
Each of you will be changed to some degree by this case. You will leave this courtroom after rendering a verdict, perhaps a month from now, carrying with you an abiding memory of the horror that occurred in that house at 112 Ocean Avenue in the dead of night 11 months ago.
I'll let you finish.
Go on. What do you want to say?
I'll let you finish.
Okay. I didn't write the rest. I didn't read the rest of his.
Oh, that is it?
I didn't write the rest of his opening statement, but I thought that part was just good.
Okay. I thought there was more to it.
No, but I do talk about it.
If you can honestly look me in the eye and tell me that lawyers are not just dressed up theater kids. Then
all right.
That right there, I was like, oh, that flashback to you having to memorize monologues.
Right.
In drama
Absolutely.
class.
Absolutely.
Like, I remember the one that I had to memorize from Pretty Woman, and it was dramatic.
Yeah. So Sullivan went on to talk about how the jury needs to bear in mind the violent acts that Ronald had carried out, and they needed to not think that he was insane at the time of the murder, as he was expecting Ronald's defense to swing.
Sure.
He wanted them to know that he had the intention, that he knew 100% what he was doing. It was very long, which is why I didn't include it.
Yeah.
Sullivan went on to call a number of witnesses, from police who worked the case to different friends and relatives of Ronald's. He wanted to show the jury that Ronald was a person, one who was capable of murdering his entire family in cold blood, someone who was sane enough to commit these acts and knew what he was doing the entire time. Then Ronald's attorney, William Weber, along with his defense, were up. They tried to argue for and enter into an insanity plea, as DeFeo claimed that he was guided by malevolent voices who told him to kill, and that he was unable to control his behavior. That he had acted in self-defense from the demonic voices in his head, voices telling him to kill his family. All right, this next part.
Wait a minute.
Okay, we'll rewind to that part. Thoughts?
You had to do it in self-defense because of the voices.
Demonic voices.
In your head.
Who were going to kill you if you didn't kill your family. So that's one. Keep that in your mind.
Like,
that's one defense.
I get the whole self-preservation thing, but like, if I really thought that a demon was like threatening my life and saying that it's either you or your family,
I'd move.
I would just say, well, okay, then me. Like, I wouldn't.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't say like, okay, well, I guess I'll go kill them
let me
now.
do the family.
Like, it's, like the trolley problem.
Oh God, I hate that one.
So it's like, you could have said like possessed. You could have said anything, something, thoughts. They were possessed by these spirits. I would have even been better.
We will get to something similar to that.
Because that, you start off, and again, these fucking
I know.
lawyers on the jury. I'm like, do you really expect me to believe that?
All right, so this next part's going to make you...
Okay.
Weber, his defense attorney, showed Ronald a picture of his mother, slain in her bed, and asked him if this was his mother. Ronald replied that he had never seen that person before in his life, that he didn't know who that person was. How the fuck are you going to say you don't know who your mom is? Like, you're trying too hard at this insanity defense.
So hard.
Like, it's just making you look stupid.
You passed the line at least 15 lies ago.
We will keep passing that line where it's just so stupid.
You can't even see it anymore.
I know. What was that one thing? It's like, this is you, and this is the dot. Like, I can't remember what it is.
The point, you.
You are so far that it looks like a dot.
Oh, yes.
Yes!
Oh my God, what is that from?
I don't know.
Oh my God. You have to look it up right now.
Okay. Let's pause while we take a little look-up break.
So far over the line.
The Road to El Dorado?
That's what I'm thinking too.
No. Friends.
Oh, Dot! Kisses the girl! Kisses Joey's girlfriend! Joey says it to Chandler. Ha!
It could have been The Road to El Dorado, though.
It could have been.
I think we were close
I
there.
was like trying to think like of the moment when that would have happened.
In The Road to El Dorado?
Yeah.
When he pretended to be a god. That's a good movie.
Okay, but they both agreed to pretend to be gods.
Yeah, until he went too far over the line and started like dating that girl.
Oh, right. Well, see, in my head, it's always that Julio is mad at Miguel because he doesn't think Miguel thinks things through, but then,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Next movie night movie.
Oh, love that.
I do too. All right, so Ronald was then asked if he killed his father, to which he said yes.
Wait.
That he killed all of them in self-defense. Weber then asked Ronald why he did such a thing, to which Ronald said, "As far as I'm concerned, if I didn't kill my family, they were going to kill me. As far as I'm concerned, what I did was self-defense, and there was nothing wrong with it. When I got the gun in my hand, there's no doubt in my mind who I am. I am God."
Oh, no.
See, they're trying way too hard at this insanity defense. Like, you don't know who your mom is, but you know who your dad is.
Mhm.
And now you're killing them in self-defense, but not from the demons, but in self-defense because they're going to kill you. But now you got to kill them because you're God.
Yeah.
Like, you're putting too many, like, ideations and delusions in here that it's just not good.
Yeah. You are missing half the things that you said. You know, you lie. You can only have a couple of lies because then you
Right.
start to lose track of them.
Yes. So it was clear the defense was trying to paint him as someone out of touch with reality, someone who didn't know what they were doing, but Sullivan, on the prosecution, tore into them. I think I was reading, it was either his viewpoint or someone else's viewpoint, but it just made Sullivan seem like this genius.
Yeah.
And he like, obviously, I couldn't add it all in, but he just was thinking of all these things to counteract everything the defense said. It was awesome. So he was ridiculing Ronald for saying he was unable to identify his own mother and how there were inconsistencies with his testimony and the statement he gave to police on the night of the crime. So he's saying, this is what you're saying now. This is what you wrote the night the crime happened. Why are they so different? He wanted to push Ronald's buttons to show the jury that he was indeed just a cold-blooded killer. And he pushed those buttons so much that at one point from the stand, Ronald yelled, "If I had any sense, which I don't, I'd come down there and kill you now." It's like, why did you have to add in that which I don't? You know what I'm saying?
It's like he was losing it for a second, had a blip of like reality check.
Right.
Of like remembering why he's there and then right back into it.
So Dr. Daniel Schwartz, the psychiatrist for the defense, was called. So side note a little about Schwartz. He was a well-known psychiatrist. He was actually known for being the one who found David Berkowitz to be criminally insane in the wake of the Son of Sam killings. You don't talk about this, do you?
No. But I'm telling you, when I start going into my story, you're going to be like, what the fuck?
So Schwartz tried to support the claim that Ronald not being sane, like at the time of the crimes. He stated that Ronald was neurotic and suffered from dissociative disorder.
Of course.
Which he's trying to say that as dissociative disorder, he's seeing the crimes happening from outside of his body and he's not able to stop it. Like he's a observer of everything that's going on. That he wasn't fully aware of what he was doing.
He was disassociating?
Fitting name. And he was and he was distracted by paranoid neurotic delusions. But the prosecution's psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Zolan, went against this and said that Ronald suffered from antisocial personality disorder, which made him aware of his actions and that he was aware of what was right and wrong, that he was motivated by, quote, an imperious, self-centered attitude.
That's like the case I talked about for, I forget the state, one of these states. And the guy had tried to say that he was crazy and the prosecutors, psychiatrists were like, no, he doesn't have, I think it was like paranoid schizophrenia. And they were like, he has antisocial disorder and he's just doing things
because he's self-centered.
Yeah.
So I read too that the prosecution tried to argue that Ronald was also a drug addict, but was well aware of what he was doing at the time. I don't know how that fits in, but he was given many different urine analysis tests between June and October. And 2 of those tests showed traces of quinine, which is used as the base in heroin.
Oh.
So just another fun fact. So the jury's first vote came back at 10-2, with 2 holdouts who were unsure of Ronald's mental state at the time of the murders.
Okay.
But after reviewing the transcript of Ronald's testimony, a final unanimous vote came back. On Friday, November 21st, 1975, Ronald DeFeo was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 6 concurrent sentences of 25 years to life.
Good.
So a minimum of 150 years.
Love it.
He was sent to the Green Haven Correction Facility in Beekman, New York. Or Beekman. He tried to file many motions to return back to court, as well as many appeals to the parole board, but all were denied.
Good.
The funeral for the DeFeo family was a huge affair. The church where their service happened was attended by over 800 people.
Oh my God. Wonder if they all spoke a different language.
Oh, One for each of the different languages. And 300 additional people were standing outside during the service as there was literally no room left in the church.
Wow.
The family was laid to rest next to each other at the St. Charles Cemetery in Amityville. So as you can see, there are many questions that surround this case, and many are just left unanswered and are leaving police puzzled. How did all 6 victims die in their sleep, all without a struggle? How did not one wake up during the murder of the others? At one point, Ronald had claimed that he had drugged his family's dinner, but too much time would have passed between the meal and their death, so that's also ruled out. How did the neighbors hear nothing, only a dog barking? How did none of the family wake up to gunshots?
I thought you said mom stirred.
Well, because her husband died. Like, he's right there. So she, kind of was awoken.
But do you think...
No gunshots were reported, though, by anyone in the neighborhood.
Well, okay, even if... Yes, there are times when you can hear things inside the house, and I'm sure a gun is very loud, but that part isn't quite as far-fetched to me.
I don't know. It's just weird because they said he also didn't use a silencer on his gun. So you would have heard it. I mean, Joe and I could be miles away in Reston and we'd hear a gunshot.
Well, right. But if you also think about it, it's the middle of the night. People are sleeping.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to sound as loud as if they were right there. So they might write it off as...
Yeah, but they just remember hearing the dog barking.
And if the dog was barking, they might not have heard the pops as much because all they could hear was the dog.
Maybe.
And the only thing with them not waking up...
Because if you hear it in the house, you're going to hear it in the house.
Well, yeah, no. But I'm trying to think, okay, if I was that young too, and I heard that.
But they were all still sleeping in their beds.
Oh.
Yeah. Except one place I read said that Dawn did wake up and saw her brother before he shot her, but that was the only place that I read that she woke up.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they said
they were all sleeping. Everyone was just asleep in their beds.
How do they know that?
I don't know. Maybe what Ronald said at some point.
And they took his word for it?
I don't know. That's a part I cannot answer.
Okay.
So another question, what was his motive?
Money.
Yes, he and his family didn't get along, but why would he kill his siblings as well?
Because then he would have to take care of them, and he didn't want to do that.
It was believed that with his parents and all of his siblings being dead, he would be the sole beneficiary of a $200,000 life insurance policy.
Ha!
But this motive has never been fully believed and has never been fully proven.
Okay.
So for now, these questions will never be answered. So now we move on to the Lutz family.
Oh my God, we have another one?
Yes, this is all Amityville.
Okay, I have to pee.
I told you this was a long one.
It dawned on me towards the end. I was like, actually, there's 2 things that happened because I don't understand what the creepy part is yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's the murder.
Well, yeah, but that's here I am expecting that this is going to be ooh, haunted, creepy house.
Oh, we'll get there.
I'm sure. But I'm like, oh, true crime. It doesn't scare me the same way that ghost stories do. Which I know is not correct in logic, but...
A little backwards. Okay. All right. So then we have the Lutz family. So obviously, with the Tefeo family having died and Ronald being locked up, the house was put on the market. Enter the Lutz family.
No, thank you. I will not.
Who moved in on December 18th, 1975. So we're just a year and a couple months.
Damn.
A year and a month after everything happened.
Yeah.
George and Kathy Lutz were so excited to move into this 4,000 square foot house. And even better, they got it for a steal at only $80,000.
Yeah, because a family was murdered.
Yeah.
They have to put it on a discount.
Yeah.
It's you buy a shirt and there's a stain, so you get some money off.
Exactly. Or there's a little, tweak or something.
Yeah. Buttons missing.
Yeah. So they moved into the house with their 3 kids, Christopher, Daniel, and Melissa. George Lutz was a land surveyor whose business had unfortunately just declared bankruptcy, making it all the more confusing as to how they were able to afford this house.
Well, they got it for a steal.
Yes, it was a steal, but still way above their means at the time.
Okay.
After moving in is when the Lutz family started to notice some concerning things.
Uh-oh.
So let's go over the list of what they experienced in their house.
Oh, no.
The walls would ooze green slime. SpongeBob. Boom. But actually not kidding, that's actually what the article said, and they actually did ooze green slime. They would see eyes peering at them from, from outside of the house.
Oh my God. Can we skip this part?
No. Foul odors. The toilets would be backed up with a black, smelly slime. Windows would suddenly shatter for no reason. The front door would violently be shaken off its hinges. Swarms of carnivorous flies, disembodied ominous whispers. Kathy claimed that she looked in the mirror and saw a decrepit elderly woman staring back at her.
Fucked up. Never. Rule number 2 of a scary house. 1, don't go in.
Okay. But if you go in,
don't look in a fucking mirror.
Right. And it was reported that Kathy allegedly levitated in bed. George claimed to wake up every night at 3:15 a.m. If this time sounds familiar, it's because that is the exact time that Ronald killed his family just about a year prior. And George himself had a few other run-ins with the paranormal. In one particular incident, he saw a presence, quote, as definite as a shadow, in the shape of a man move towards him, then disappeared. He also said that a porcelain lion that was kept in the corner of his living room lunged at him and bit him on the ankle. That's a little far-fetched.
Yeah, a little bit.
He saw a ghostly vision of Ronald's head floating in the cellar. George and Kathy believe that they both saw the burned impression of a hooded demonic figure in their fireplace. I don't truly know what that means. And they both saw a floating pig with glowing red eyes out of their living room window.
You had me for a little bit.
Up until his stuff, yes.
You really, I was like, damn, this is about to be so fucking creepy. And I'm like,
Right.
It sounds like a fun house.
So during this time, the Lutz had countless ghost hunters and psychics in to see what was going on and see if they could help the family.
Mm-hmm.
All that this family experienced happened over the course of just 28 days. After a total of only 28 days, the Lutz family moved out, saying they had to get out in fear of the demons that resided in the house. They quickly moved to California after. So they went from East Coast to West Coast.
They moved. Okay.
They're like, we're done.
Now, maybe I believe them a little bit if they up and moved across the country.
Especially if they didn't have a lot of money and they're like, we're out.
Like, we're not even going to just go to a new neighborhood. We are gone.
Out of the state, out of the coast.
Not even in the same time zone.
No. So on February 16th, 1976, not long after the family fled, George Lutz called a man named Dr. Stephen Kaplan. Dr. Kaplan was a well-respected Long Island parapsychologist and the founder of the Parapsychology Institute of America.
Okay.
Lutz was requesting Mr. Kaplan and associates investigate the house. Lutz explained everything to Dr. Kaplan, all the paranormal things that they experienced, all the ghosts and ghouls and poltergeists that resided in the house. But Dr. Kaplan said that their initial conversation began to arouse suspicions to the validity of George's claim that the house was haunted by demons and other evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kaplan asked George many questions over this time that they were talking and only grew more and more suspicious that his tales were nothing more than that, just tales.
Okay.
The house went into foreclosure in 1977. Also in that year, in 1977, Jay Anson wrote a book called The Amityville Horror, which was based on the reports and events that surrounded this house. Jay Anson had been meeting with George Lutz, who told him everything that the family had experienced in those 28 days.
What the fuck happened to doctor-patient confidentiality?
No, this is Jay Anson. This is just the guy who wrote the book. So he's talking to George Lutz, the guy who lived in the house.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Sorry. I forgot that. I thought it was the doctor.
That's okay.
Okay.
So during their conversations, he recorded over 45 hours of conversations that he had with Lutz, which he used to turn the whole story into a book.
Mm-hmm.
And this book was an absolute hit.
Well,
It was so popular that it actually sold over 6.5 million copies.
Damn.
And it was Anson and Lutz who split the profits from this book 50-50.
Hey, good for him.
The book that Jay Anson wrote in 1977 served as the foundation for the 1979 film, The Amityville Horror. There have actually been over 14 movies made based on these murders.
Oh.
The most popular and well-known version is the 2005 movie that stars Ryan Reynolds. So I tried to watch this the other day. I was like, yeah, we're going to watch the movie. We're going to get caught up on what's going on. I found it on Prime and it was unavailable.
Damn.
I was like, well, what a bummer. So I did not watch it. Okay, so after the book was released, Dr. Kaplan, our doctor friend, read it, and it only confirmed to him that the whole story George was weaving was untrue.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't the only one who questioned the story George was telling. Many believed that the events that Lutz spoke about were all fabricated. So let's start with Dr. Kaplan. He said that it was clear that George did his homework about all things paranormal, which would make sense considering that it's well known that George was curious about paranormal activity.
Okay.
He would read books on books about demons, ghosts, ghouls, the occult, and oftentimes he would actively try to summon spirits. So he was like very into this stuff, and he knew.
You brought that shit into the house, motherfucker.
So he knew all of this.
This is
stuff.
your own fault.
You have the same thoughts as someone I will talk about. So his experiences were full of all these spirits and ghosts and ghouls and demons, almost more than a episode title. More than a house like this could hold and more than could be experienced in 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
While reading this book, Dr. Kaplan found many inconsistencies with what the book said versus what George had told him during one of their phone calls. One big exaggeration was the role that a priest friend played. So in the book, is FR, what would FR be for priests?
Father?
Oh, maybe. Father Mancuso, the priest, tried to bless the house but was terrorized by a demon. The demon followed him back to the rectory, and here's where the priest was afflicted by boils, allastigmata, which is bleeding palms, a fever, and a pervasive scent of
How do your
excrement.
palms just start bleeding?
That's what the thing is. It's supposed to symbolize Jesus.
Oh.
So your palms and your feet will start to bleed. It's called stigmata.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So in actuality, a priest did come bless the house due to the concerns of it being haunted, but no one was harmed or terrorized by a demon. So that was an exaggeration.
No one was harmed in the making of this exorcism.
Then there's an old player in this game, William Weber, Ronald DeFeo's defense attorney.
Oh, right. That guy.
Yeah. So he was getting involved because Ronald's name had been dragged into stories about the hauntings.
Okay.
Obviously. He said that the hauntings that Lutz experienced were just an elaborate hoax.
Oh, right. I forgot that this guy's technically still alive.
Yeah. So he said that he, Anson, and Lutz had all conjured up this story over a few drinks one night.
Wait, who? Say that again?
Lutz,
Uh-huh.
Anson, the guy who wrote the book,
Yeah.
and Weber, the attorney. He said one day over drinks, they all just kind of came up with this entire story.
Weber said that.
Yeah. He was quoted saying, quote, "I know this book's a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine. I told George Lutz that Ronnie DeFeo used to call the neighbor's cat a pig. George was a con artist. He improvised on that, and in the book, he sees a demon pig through a window." Then we have George's stepson, Christopher Quarantino. Quarantino was only 7 when his mom and his stepdad, George, moved into the new house. He said that the hauntings that the family experienced in this house actually did happen. He said that the hauntings were not a hoax, and that his father had brought the hauntings upon the family by dabbling into the occult.
Mm-hmm.
However, he did say that some of the details about the hauntings and some hauntings themselves may have been exaggerated in a way for George to profit off the books and subsequent movies.
Makes sense.
Quote, "He's a professional showman in my opinion. I just feel as though we're being exploited." Quarantino noted how there have been 3 representations of what happened in the house: the book,
Mm-hmm.
the movies, and the movie remake. He said that none of them have been accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Quarantino and George also never got along, so much so that when Quarantino was 16, he moved out of the house.
Okay.
Lutz actually sued, like, not this house, but moved out when they were together.
Yeah.
Lutz actually sued Quarantino in Nevada District Court in 2003 over these allegations that Quarantino made of trademark infringement and fraud relating to any future movies planned by Lutz. He then filed a counterclaim, but that one was dismissed. It says the other one was still open at the time of this article, but I don't
understand.
They're just saying,
Who
like,
sued who?
Lutz sued his stepson.
Uh-huh.
Stepson countersued him.
What did Lutz sue his stepson over?
Trademark infringement and fraud relating to any future movies planned by Lutz. So I guess saying that, like, what you're planning in the movies you're making aren't right. Like, they aren't true. So it's fraud. I don't know.
Wait, but Lutz sued his son over that?
His son was saying these bad things about him, so Lutz sued him.
Okay.
Yeah. Which you can do. It's like defamation or something.
No, I know, but just the way the wording of that sounds doesn't make sense to me.
I know.
But because that's what I was like, oh, like libel or defamation or
Yeah.
whatever. But then when you read the name, I was like,
Yeah, I don't know.
okay,
There wasn't much going into that.
got it.
Just that they didn't like each other and they sued each other for stuff. So many other people believe that Lutz made up these stories for publicity and as a financial motivation to help with the debt that his family was in. Remember, they didn't have a lot of money. They moved.
Right.
All of these tales of horror and demonic possession were debunked by the Catholic Diocese of Rockville Center, the Amity Police Department, William Weber, U.S. District Court Judge Jack Weinstein, and even George and Kathleen Lutz themselves.
Oh.
They do recount parts of the story. So there are things that they say are true, but there are many parts that they just say, like, no, they weren't true.
Okay.
But there are some people who do believe that the hauntings are real. First, one of the Lutz children, Daniel, he was in a documentary or something where he was, like, trying to beg people to believe that these stories are real. Like, he was very traumatized by what happened.
Yeah.
And he's trying to say, like, please believe us. Like, this actually happened and, like, we're not okay. Then we have paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. I have talked about
those
them.
are the Connecticut people.
Yes.
Ah.
Yes. So they helped with the second film, Amityville 2, The Possession, and they acted as demonology advisors for the film. It is because they also helped do the investigations for this house.
Okay.
So alongside all the Conjuring things, which was in Connecticut, this may be one of their most popular investigations.
Okay.
The Warrens believed the Lutz.
Okay.
Ed even called the house diabolically infested and that they were certain that something evil lurks in the house. The Warrens are responsible for the famous picture known as Demonic Boy. Weeks after the Lutz family moved out is when the Warrens did an investigation at the house.
Mm-hmm.
Upstairs, they took a photo at the top of the staircase of, like, the top and the landing area.
Yeah.
I'll show you the picture.
No.
I'm going to show you now, actually.
No.
Peeking out from one of the rooms. Mackenzie pulled her legs up. So peeking out from one of the rooms is what looks like a little boy with glowing eyes. There were no children at the house, like in the house at the time that the photo was taken. By some, this is believed to be the ghost of John Matthew DeFeo, who was only 9 years old when he was murdered. Let me pull up the picture.
I'm not looking. You can't make me look. You can't make me do it. You asshole.
Look at the date. You're gonna have to post it.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You have to post it.
You
and if
can.
Mackenzie's annoying and doesn't post it, search demonic boy photograph online.
You can.
So the next owners of the house
also have access to the Instagram.
Shut up. So the next owners of this house were James and Barbara Cromartie. They were aware of the history and background of this house, so they changed the address from 111 Ocean Avenue to 108, hoping it would throw off stalkers and lurkers and would raise the value of the house.
Yes.
So to this day, it's still 108 Ocean Avenue. In 2016, the house was on the market for $850,000.
Damn.
Which was actually much lower than how much it sold for in 2010.
Oh.
But in February 2017, it was sold for $605,000, which is over $200,000 less than its initial asking price. Then I looked on Zillow.
Okay.
The house is blurred out in all of the pictures, so you can't even see it. It says it's off the market, but the Zestimate is $991,000. Yeah.
Wait. Yeah.
Yeah, close to $1 million. Like just under $1 million. Yes. So with all of this stuff going on, Ronald DeFeo was growing resentful of all this new and additional attention he was receiving while in prison. Even in prison, with all of this new attention on him, he changed his story multiple times.
Oh my God. Give it a rest.
At one point, he tried to claim that his mother and sister had even committed some of the murders with him.
Oh my.
In 1990, he said that his sister Dawn, as well as 2 unnamed friends, killed the family, quote, out of desperation. Ronald's new story said that he and his father got into a particularly bad fight that night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this night that Ronald and Dawn decided that they needed to kill their parents, and their plan went into effect. Ronald claimed that Dawn had been the one who killed the remaining siblings as to not leave any witnesses. But when Ronald found out what she had done, he was enraged by her actions. He knocked her unconscious on her bed, then shot her in the head. Apparently during—
Out of all the stories he's told, that is by far the most logical one.
Right. Yeah. So apparently during the original police investigation, traces of gunpowder had been found on Dawn's nightgown, which suggests that she may have actually discharged a firearm. But this line of inquiry was not pursued after Ronald's confession that he did it. Contact of these 2 unnamed friends was attempted, but proved to be unsuccessful as one died in January 2001, and the other is said to have entered witness protection.
Oh.
In 1986, Ronald had a story that his sister killed his father, then distraught, his mother killed the sister, so he killed his mother.
See, that,
Right. He did so because he said he was afraid of his grandfather, and one of his father's—
grandfather?
Right. Who would be mad about the killing of something.
Oh my God.
And he was also afraid of one of his father's uncles, Pete DeFeo, who was apparently the caporegime, or captain, of the Genovese crime family. So there were new stories of what happened that night that came out after the case around the house started to gain some publicity because, he wants to be in the public. He remained in prison all the way until his death in 2021 at the age of only 69. Before he died, DeFeo left behind this quote. Quote, I guess the Amityville Horror really is supposed to be me, because I'm the one that got convicted of killing my family. I'm the one they say who did it. I'm the one that's supposed to be possessed by the devil.
You said you were possessed by the
devil. I know. Okay, so I'm almost done. All right, so as I said, there was that 2005 remake of the film, which starred Ryan Reynolds as George Lutz and Melissa George as Kathy Lutz. So this movie tells the story about what happened to the Lutz family after they moved into the house. And because such a dark story surrounded this movie, it's not hard to believe that some dark and spooky things happened on set.
Is it like one of those self-fulfilling prophecies, though? Like you're making a scary movie and so
things seem scarier?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
So this thing actually happened on set. Like this is an actual situation that happened. So there's one scene in the movie where Melissa George is shooting in a boathouse. So it's a boathouse scene.
Okay.
Police all of a sudden approached the cast and crew to let them know that a body had been found floating nearby by a local fisherman. About this, George—
Okay, that—
creepy, right?
That's creepy.
Right. Okay. So Melissa George said, quote, we were filming at the boathouse and the police came by. They were on the water there and they said that they found a dead body that had floated to the surface. We were like, awesome, nervous laugh. That makes everything much more comfortable in this movie.
Oh my God.
Reynolds said that he believed the finding of the body was truly an accident and didn't have any negative intentions behind it.
Well, sure.
He told Radio Free Entertainment, quote, this was a densely populated lake area as well. I mean, it wasn't like a secluded pond and this mafia member floating up or something. A legitimate accident, I think. While filming the movie during the first week, actually, the real Kathy Lutz died of emphysema.
Oh my God.
This is a lung disease which causes shortness of breath due to destruction and dilatation of the alveoli.
So smoking.
Maybe. But anywho, her dying during the first week of filming, the cast and crew took it as a bad omen.
I mean, okay. I get that these things that are oddly, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, these things that are happening are creepy and weird, but you're also filming a creepy and weird movie.
Okay, here's another creepy one.
Okay.
The cast and crew, to include Ryan Reynolds, all started waking up at exactly 3:15 every morning.
No, see, as someone... Trust me, as someone who has had many self-fulfilling prophecies of I'm probably going to wake up in the middle of the night and like clockwork every single time.
Same.
And even like part of the reason I started waking up was because somebody was waking up in the middle of the night. And so my body just got used to it.
Yeah.
And that's when I would wake up. So I feel like if you have all these things that are starting to happen and all you need is one or two people to start talking about it, that it's happening to them.
Well, Reynolds told MovieWeb, quote, I think a lot of people make that stuff up to sell their movie, but there was some weird stuff that happened. A lot of the crew were waking up at 3:15 in the morning, which was when all of those atrocities in the house took place each time. I think it was a subconscious thing. You read the script and suddenly pop awake at 3:15 in the morning.
See, Ryan and I, we're just so connected.
He really tries to downplay like anything that happens. So Melissa George reported some paranormal happenings that occurred during filming as well. She said that after hearing of Lutz's passing, an ice-cold patch of air followed her around set. She also said that when she first saw the set of the home, because they didn't film on location. They had like a set, I think, up in New Jersey or something. But she said looking at that house, she got full body chills. And she wasn't the only one who felt that way about the house. Reynolds said that the house they were using was terrifying and had a very upsetting air around it. He said it didn't feel like a set. It just felt upsetting. She had one story about how one night after filming, after everyone had left, the lights inside of the house randomly turned on. No one was in the house. The guards were called. They went. They weren't able to find anyone and had no reason why the lights should have turned on. No one was able to explain why that happened. Also, the fear that you see on Melissa George's face throughout the movie is not acting. She was actually genuinely terrified for most of filming because of how the nature in the movie.
I feel like I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reynolds also scared himself while filming an intense scene. So there's a wood chopping scene, if anyone's seen the movie. I've seen this movie a really long time ago, so I can't remember it exactly.
Yeah, and I just...
which is why
I should have watched it again.
Which is why I want to rewatch it. But so, in the scene...
Missed it.
Reynolds lightly slapped Jesse James, who was a fellow actor. I think he played one of the children. The slap wasn't hard, but it also wasn't planned. So they hadn't planned this slap at all. Reynolds said that it came out so organically and that he was so disturbed that how like organic this slap that he just did felt. So that like really scared him.
Yeah.
Then we have James Bronwyn, who played George Lutz in the 1979 version of the movie. He said that before he was cast, he returned home one night, took his pants off and threw them over his bedroom door as he had done many times before. Yeah, like when your door's out, just throwing it over the door. Your door's open, so it's a ledge. He just throws it over the ledge of the door. Do you need
pants?
Yeah, just his pants. He just tossed them over the door.
Why would you toss them over the door?
I don't know. To let them hang there?
Over the door?
I'm not a pants expert. But anywho, so that's what he did.
That doesn't make any sense.
Why?
When have you ever thrown your pants over the door?
I haven't, but he, I guess, does. This was in the 1970s. Times were different.
Not doors!
Why are you thinking this is so weird?
Because I'm trying to imagine why you would throw it over a door.
Well, people throw their jackets up there. People will put towels there to dry. Like, doors are used for a lot of things. Well, anywho, you've never had your towels dry on a door.
Towel, I'll give you. But if you're going to go to bed, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to close the door?
Not everyone closes their door. Do you close your door when you sleep?
No, but that's not the point. I'm not putting shit over it.
It's his bedroom door. Anywho, he does that. He gets into bed and he starts reading the Amityville Horror, the book. He got to a scary part in the novel and his pants just fell to the floor.
Yeah, because they don't want to be on the fucking door.
He said it terrified him, then he started laughing. And it was at that moment that he knew he needed to be in the film. I know. So there you have it.
Fucking weird pants throwing, doorman.
So there we have the story surrounding the Amityville Horror.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a ride.
I know.
I always enjoy the stories that are like half true crime, half haunted.
I do too,
Those
which
are
I
fun.
did last week too, which I
Yes.
realized as I was doing this one.
That's fine.
But when I knew we were doing New York, I was like, ooh, I know what I'm doing.
Nice.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
Thank you.
Very
This
good.
was very fun.
Yes, I've thoroughly enjoyed listening.
Thank you. Good.
Yes.
I hope everyone else did too, because it was very long.
They don't matter. We're doing this. We're doing this for each other.
All right, Mackenzie, what are you telling us about tonight?
So I stumbled upon this case when I was looking into a different one and decided that this one was a juicy one and changed gears.
All right.
Went full sleuth mode.
Oh.
And I was trying to find more information. And let me tell you, it was not as easy as I thought it would be. But I will get more into my own investigation later on.
Okay.
But before I dive in, I want to give a shout out to this podcast called Shoe Leather. They are journalism grad students from Columbia University, and it's an investigative podcast. This is like their description from their website. Shoe Leather is an investigative podcast that goes behind the scenes of forgotten stories that shape New York City. Go along with the team as they knock on doors and track down the people who were at the center of the news.
Oh, well, that's cool.
They had a lot of great information, and they really did do the investigative stuff.
Wow.
They went to the scene, called family members, tried to get information from police and like police records. So I wanted to give them a shout out because they were a really great source of information.
Dang.
And kind of helped beef this up a little bit. So we do have to do a little smidge of history in order to understand what makes this case so unique.
Naturally.
So we go back to the summer of 1977 in New York City.
Oh my gosh, we're around the same time.
I know. It's kind of like when yours ended, mine started.
Oh.
So for all you history buffs or native New Yorkers, this year should be familiar to you. It's during the summer of July 1977, specifically July 13th, 1977, that the notorious New York City blackout occurred.
Oh.
New York City was going through an economic crisis and crime rates were soaring. This crisis mainly affected the lower income residents, as they always do.
Always.
And many historians say that this blackout shined a light.
Finger guns.
Pun intended. On the racial inequalities for housing and other policies in the city.
Yes.
On this particular day in July, it was especially hot. And according to Forbes, research has shown that there are associations with heat waves and high crime rates. A study done by the Sustainable Cities and Society of Major U.S. Cities found that between 2007 and 2017, for every 5-degree Celsius rise in daily temperature, sex offenses increased by 4.5% over 8 days.
Wild.
Another study by the National Library of Medicine found that for every 5 degrees Celsius that it goes up, homicides in Chicago increased by 9.5% over 7 days and 8.8% in New York.
What the heck?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it even said in there too, like it's predominantly because of whatever housing conditions are like for usually the lower income residents.
Right.
And usually they're not good. And so now you're irritable, you're hot, and it goes
I mean,
there.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just feel like committing a crime would make you really hot.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and this is like universal. Like they mentioned even something, they did one in Australia, the United Kingdom, and a couple other places.
Whoa.
And it was like they saw the same trends. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So you can't just say, oh, those Americans, because it's not just us.
The amount of violence was probably way less than these other countries.
Yeah,
but,
I didn't look into that one. I stopped reading after.
But the percentages would be the same.
No, because it collected them together. It wasn't.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm just always going to give you shit for the 20% thing in Rhode Island.
It still makes sense in my head.
It doesn't make sense normally.
That's your problem. You're not in my head.
Thank God. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, it's fucking wild in there.
I know.
So as the sun was going down, a bolt of lightning struck a power station in Westchester at 8:37 p.m., followed by several more, and within the hour, the entire city's electrical grid went dead. All 5 boroughs were affected, and as one can imagine, chaos erupted.
Of course.
So here are some of the basics of what happened during the 25 hours of this blackout. So officials shut down both airports, LaGuardia and JFK. The tunnels going into and out of the city were closed down. Approximately 4,000 people had to be evacuated from the subways. And the lights at Shea Stadium went out at 9:30 with the Mets down 2-1 against the Cubs.
Oh, sucks.
So more than 1,000 fires have been set by arsonists throughout the city. A CBS Evening News anchor said, quote, "Some looters roamed the streets yelling, 'It's Christmas time, it's Christmas time.' And so it was, as thousands of them broke security fences and windows and helped themselves to all kinds of merchandise when the blackout hit."
Why do people think that's okay? Like, oh, there's no lights. Let me rob something.
Yeah, and like part of what it was like reading was more so focused on like someone had said something about them, like the people who were doing it didn't feel like the same policies and things applied to the people who like probably were less affected or something like that.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, but like you're like trying it was weird. It was that whole like this is what it was in history to show these racial inequalities, but then it also like even within that own article, the way that it talked about people,
right?
You're kind of like, okay, wait, are you
What you're
saying it's
doing right
unfair,
now.
or are you saying
right?
Either way, you're right. It doesn't call for hurting a lot of businesses that most likely are not going to be able to bounce back,
right?
And so it's like, I can understand wanting to fight injustices, but then if you end up hurting the people in your community,
yeah, then it's not,
right.
You're not doing anything.
Now, granted, it was not like all of these people were just law-abiding citizens one day, and then this happened, and
right.
There were some bad people just continuing to do bad things. But people were carrying off with TVs, furniture, clothing, and jewelry. And according to the New York Times story from the time, looters stole from 1,600 shops.
Wow.
Some businesses never recovered.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
Right? I don't know if it's the same CBS News anchor, but they also said there was looting throughout the city in Times Square, Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. The New York Post said that hip-hop music took off rapidly in the months following the blackout. Some attribute this to the large quantity of DJ equipment stolen that night.
Wild.
So mobs, mafia, that kind of thing. Of course, they were taking advantage of the darkness by setting fires, smashing windows, and taking anything they can get their hands on. The Daily Mail reported that 50 cars had been hotwired and driven out of showrooms to be dismantled and sold for parts.
Damn.
Yeah. Hundreds of people were hospitalized from fires and fights breaking out. Close to 4,000 people were arrested in all 5 boroughs and cost the city, I read 2 different things, and they're contrastly different numbers.
Okay.
Anywhere from 61 to $300 million.
Very different.
Right. Both in the millions, but I only found how much the damage was in 2 places.
Yeah.
And obviously they don't agree.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Quite different.
A lot of money.
That's what we know.
Right. The New York City mayor, Abraham Beame, declared a state of emergency. And the Daily Mail also reported that 9 months after the blackout, the city apparently experienced a small baby boom. A much better way to spend your time, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so funny. They say that during like blizzards and stuff. 9 months after that is when it's a big baby boom as well. Right, all the COVID babies. Yeah. You can only be intimate with one person.
Right. The blackout wasn't the only thing causing terror in New York during this time. To all the true crime aficionados out there, this date should also be familiar because the serial killer, Son of Sam, was terrorizing New York City during the summer of 1977.
How do we always have this?
I don't know. His crimes spanned from late July of 1976 to the end of July in 1977, and David Berkowitz was finally apprehended early August of 1977. One would think that with a serial killer on the loose and thousands of people taking advantage of the blackout for their own personal gain, that homicides would be high on the list of crimes occurring during this time. However, during the entire 25 hours of the blackout, only a single homicide occurred.
Wow.
The blackout does take a role in this case because it is most likely contributed to the fact that the case is still unsolved 45 years later.
You and your unsolved.
Yeah. Yeah. It was either that or a social justice issue. So I was like, I feel like I just did one, so I'll save this for the next time we come around to New York.
We also have haunted places and urban legends and cryptids.
If I can't find a blog, multiple ones that have a bajillion comments, it's not worth it. So we're headed to Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn, where most of the neighborhoods in this area are relatively safe. Today, this neighborhood has been gentrified and is known for its celebrity residents such as Beyonce and her husband, Jay-Z.
So what does gentrified mean? Does that just mean like older people have moved in? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, this makes up for me asking where it
Amityville.
was. No, gentrified is when it you take all the affordable housing, and it's usually, again, lower income residents, and you kick them out, and then you rebuild everything, make it really fancy, and charge $1 million.
Oh. Okay. That's why Beyonce and Jay-Z can live there.
Old people are geriatrics.
Oh, yeah, they are.
If you don't keep this in here and you only keep the part where I asked what town it was in, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
People need to forgive me. It's my Friday.
Yeah, Beyonce and her husband Jay-Z.
They're not that old.
Yeah. Naomi Watts and Paul Giamatti, big fat liar, the guy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gabriel Bryan, he's an Irish director. Scary movies I never heard of. I don't know.
Of course, naturally.
I think there might have been a house, a boat. I don't know.
A boathouse thing.
Something. You can look it up if you want. During the 1970s, this neighborhood was mostly made up of working class Italian families where everyone knew everyone and everyone knew everyone's business.
Mm-hmm.
The church that was in this area, St. Mary's Star of the Sea, was a Roman Catholic church where Al Capone was married.
Oh,
yeah. So Dominic Siscone was born in 1960 and was the youngest of 4 with 2 older brothers and his sister Mildred. They were a very close family and all the siblings adored their baby brother. Mildred told Shoe Leather, quote, he was a sweetheart. To tell you the truth, he was tough, but he was sweet. He was helpful. You know, he had a big heart and he was funny. He was very comical. I mean, I'm 3 years older than him and he used to have me in stitches. When I saw that part, I was like, have me in stitches. And then when she like gets irritated, I'm like really read it in like a
oh my gosh.
New York accent. So
your native accent.
My native accent. He was good-natured and called everyone toots.
Oh.
He was also fiercely loyal to his neighborhood and friends, the protective type. Dom had dreams of becoming a boxer and wasn't against practicing his skills on anyone who tried to mess with any of the local girls or come over from Red Hook projects to hang on his turf. Mildred told the Leather Shoe podcast, quote, if someone was bothering a girl, he'd jump right in and made sure that they stopped. He wasn't afraid to step up with some people would mind their business. He would have minded his business, but he didn't, and he would help, you know, leave her alone, blah, 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 whatever. You know, he stood up for himself and the people that he loved. Dom was a big dude. Tommy Perez, who grew up with the Siscone brothers, said, quote, he was huge, 6 feet, maybe 250, 260 pounds.
Jeez.
Massive hands, nicest guy, very respectful of his elders, but he didn't like bullies.
Bullies. Another connection.
There you go. His sister told the New York Post, quote, he was a sweetheart, but he wasn't afraid of anybody. And that wasn't a good thing. He fought, yes, to stick up for other people, but everybody loved him. Dom had dropped out of high school and had a few run-ins with the law. He ended up going to Rikers for a few months on a misdemeanor charge after he got into an argument with a local bike shop owner, but then got into a separate fist fight with 1 or 2 other guys.
Okay.
So the Siscones lived off of Nelson Street, and this area of Carroll Gardens had shops, pizzeria, grocery and drugstore, candy store, shoe store, bike store.
I'll take you to the candy shop.
On the corner of Nelson and Court Street was a local bar called the Par 3, which was a block from where the Siscones lived. Charles Scholes' family owned the bar, and during the blackout, they were one of the only places in the neighborhood with power because they had emergency lights.
Oh, smart.
Yeah. Skoll described the blackout to the Shoe Leather podcast as, quote, it was maybe a combination of Mardi Gras, New Year's Eve, and a I don't want to say riot, but chaos. Some people were petrified of what was going on. Other people were taking it like, oh, it's party time. On the night of July 13th, Dom was hanging out around the corner from the bar with his older brother Andrew and some friends. The group was standing around a garbage pail fire, just hanging out, singing songs, and setting off fireworks. All of a sudden, Dom turned to his brother and said, I think I got shot. At first, Andrew didn't believe him, but then Dominic goes down. Andrew sees the shooter and runs after him. Dom begins stumbling towards Par 3, where Skoll sees him, and he said, quote, people might have thought he got hit with like a bottle rocket, he had a small hole in his back. One of the friends that the brothers were hanging out with, George Suarez, said, quote, I remember just hanging out, in the dark, some people having flashlights and candles and stuff, and then we hear the screaming, and it was Dominic.
Oh my God.
There was a lot of confusion as Dom tried to explain to his friends what had happened. Suarez told Shoe Leather, quote, and he said it's burning, and nobody had a clue what the hell happened. Skoll said that Dom's last words were, I'm shot. And that was when everyone sprang into action. Bystanders helped Dominic into the car and rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late.
Oh my God.
The bullet had ricocheted inside of him and hit multiple vital organs. Suarez told Shoe Leather, quote, when that happened, everything was silent. It was probably one of the scariest moments for me and everybody else that was there, and you couldn't see everybody's faces. So that made it even more scarier. Meanwhile, Andrew is still chasing after his brother's shooter. The shooter shoots at him and cuts Andrew across the eye. The shooter was able to get into a car and drive away.
Oh my God.
The only thing that Andrew was able to make out about the shooter in the darkness was that the person was well dressed. Dominic was only 17 years old when he was killed.
Jeez.
Yeah. Sad.
What were their races?
Italian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, this
wanted to be a boxer.
Yeah. So this is where things start to get real hinky. I have some theories and some information that has come to light since the night of the murder, but I could not find a single newspaper article about this from the time.
And Mackenzie loves her newspapers.
Nothing.
Both of the newspaper websites?
The only things that have been written about this case that I could find was from the New York Times, the New York Post, and the Daily Mail. And two of those basically wrote the same thing. But thankfully, the Shoe Leather podcast did some digging of their own and helped contribute to theories.
Okay.
So here are pretty much the basics of what I could find. In 1997, so 20 years later.
Right. I said right.
Oh, I thought you said wait.
No.
In 1997, Detective Patrick Talbot got a call from a reporter that was writing an article for the 20-year anniversary of the blackout. Talbot discovered the file about Dominic Siscone's unsolved murder from 1977. A week after the paper ran the article, the detective received a phone call from two anonymous people who said that they might be able to identify Dominic's killer, but they were afraid to come forward. Talbot told the New York Times, quote, the caller indicated that they had firsthand knowledge of who did the Siscone murder. The persons were very scared. They said that they would get back to me, then they hung up. About 2 months later, they called again, but hung up before giving any information. Since then, the detective never heard about or from anyone else.
Wow.
He told the New York Times in 1998, quote, I would be willing to meet with the persons anywhere, anytime. They wouldn't have to give their names. Mildred told Shoe Leather that the detectives called their mother and told her about someone calling and how they might be close to closing the case, and which, of course, caused a lot of distress for the mother because she has to relive the trauma and she's getting her hopes up.
Oh, right.
Mildred said that she had to put her foot down with the detectives and told them, quote, this is the part. Listen to me. Unless you're going to call my mother and say we got the guy who killed Dominic, make this your last call to her. Don't call my mother. Don't tell her you're getting close. Don't tell her somebody's calling. She don't need to know none of that. When you solve the murder, then you can call my mother. Like, just leave my mother alone. And he never called her again.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I think, like, one of the policemen tried to say that the family was, like, uncooperative. And that was her response to it, essentially.
Yeah.
So, 40 years later, Detective Talbot has since passed away, and the case has passed on to other detectives. Detective Kevin McDonough is with the Brooklyn South Homicide Squad, and he told the New York Post, quote, we're hoping someone comes forward with information. He also told the Post that a few years prior to the article being published, the one from the New York Post, which is now 2017, they had arrested someone from the neighborhood on drug charges, and they claimed to have information about the murder.
So 20 years also, which is interesting.
But Detective McDonough said the claims couldn't be
corroborated.
When McDonough tried talking to others who lived in the area at the time, he said, quote, people really weren't willing to talk about it, even to this day. The Post reported that the 40th anniversary of Dom's murder heated up the investigation again. They also reported that within a few years of Dom's death, 3 more bodies were found around that same area.
Wow.
One man was found with his head slumped over the wheel of his Oldsmobile, and a known drug dealer and his girlfriend's bodies were discovered in the trunk of the car.
Oh.
And
that guy's car.
I think so.
Wow.
They
Okay.
were, like, I had to read it a few times.
Right.
And, like,
Yeah.
just the way it's worded, I'm like, if I'm reading this right and the grammar is what I think it is, it sounds like they were all in the same car.
Interesting.
They were discovered when people saw blood dripping from the trunk of the car.
Oh.
All 3 had been shot. I could not find anything anywhere else about these murders. And I know I ran out of time, but even when I searched Dominic's name in our newspaper databases, both said they had 0 reports. And I did the whole fucking state.
Wow.
Yeah. I tried to find crime reports, but it's hard because I don't know the exact date or the names of any of these second victims.
Right.
Because all it said was like a local shop owner and his Oldsmobile. And then the New York Post made it sound like that these two, this like drug dealer and his girlfriend,
right,
were in the trunk.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was looking at the transcript for the podcast, they only mentioned they said 3 murders, but they only said the known drug dealer and his girlfriend part in the trunk. They didn't say who the third person was.
Weird.
Probably because they also couldn't fucking find it.
They're like, we tried too. We're just going to leave it out.
Right. So there were only 3 posts on Reddit about this case. None of the comments provided any helpful information. The comments left on the news article websites were only talking about the blackout. Shoe Leather podcast and one other podcast, My Favorite Murder, covered the case. Reddit users were not happy with some of the comments that the hosts of My Favorite Murder said in regards to the people's stores being looted, but also nothing useful in terms of information, just good tea. So the Shoe Leather podcast did digging both into Dominic's background and what the neighborhood was like at the time. They consulted with known criminologists, an expert on the mob scene in New York. Could this have been a mob hit? This is what Mildred told the podcast happened a few weeks before Dominic was shot.
We both have mobs.
Mm-hmm. My brother Dominic had a fight a week before on Henry Street with some people. Well, in that neighborhood, there were guys who were supposedly connected. Gangster stuff. I don't know. My brother had a fight with one of them. Supposedly, he was over there selling it. They came up to him and told him he can't be here. This is not your neighborhood. Get the hell back down to Court and Nelson, right? My brother said, I could do whatever I want. You're not going to tell me. Keep your mouth shut with certain people. You just in case. Whether it's a rumor or not rumor, you keep your mouth shut. You don't mess with people who could or have the power to send someone else to hurt you,
Mm-hmm.
So shortly after that, my brother got killed, all right? When asked if it was connected to the mob, she said, quote, I think it was. I think it was absolutely, positively connected.
Wow.
Mildred thinks that they were angry with Dominic for trying to sell drugs on their turf.
Right.
Criminology professor Fritz Umbeck told Shoe Leather, on places like Carroll Gardens and Red Hook, absolutely. The mob is organizing everything that's going on. It's almost a company town. Umbach said that the mob's involvement with drugs goes back decades. He said, quote, they're controlling distribution on the ground, but increasingly they start to sort of franchise the distribution. What they're doing is they're selling the right to sell the heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Dominic was selling pills and not heroin, his sister thinks that they might have wanted him out of the way because he was interfering with the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because if you're doing pills or whatever, you're not going to want the heroin.
Right.
But if you don't have the pills, you might try the heroin.
Right. Another theory is that it was just a basic turf war between 2 drug dealers. Alex Hortis is an expert on the mob in New York and told the podcast, quote, New York has sort of like these invisible maps, invisible grid lines where kind of the organized crime families kind of divided up or even lower level, not necessarily mafia, but like, drug dealers even to this day. They keep territory, so to speak. You deal there and you deal there and you deal there. And if you cross that, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Both experts and the 2 women hosting the podcast agreed that it is very plausible that Dominic's death was mob-related.
Oh, wait, Shoe Leather's 2 women?
Yeah.
Oh.
The grad students, Rachel and Claire, were not able to get a statement or police records from the NYPD because the case is still an active investigation.
Yeah.
However, they were able to get in contact with a retired New York Police Department in Brooklyn and their police commander, Charles Skoll. The 19-year-old whose family owned the bar where Dom collapsed.
Oh.
Had grown up and became a cop.
How cool.
Not just any cop, like
the cop.
The cop. The murder of Dominic Siscone was the reason that Skoll wanted to become a cop, because he wanted to help people, help solve things, and give the people closure. Like, a lot of people that they talked to said he was this really great guy. He did all these great things for the community because he's from there.
Right.
So yeah. Sounded like a good dude. He only talked about the case with the ladies in broad terms because he didn't want to get in the way of the current investigators.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But he told them, quote, there was still so much going on that when they took him to the hospital, there was still pandemonium. If it was just another summer night without the blackout, it would have been a total different scene. You had people screaming and yelling. And like I said, I don't think until the smoke cleared that, they found out the kid died. Like, what just happened? I don't think people really realized. Basically, if Dom's murder was mob-related, the blackout did not help and made finding his murderer that much harder.
Right, yeah, because you can't see anyone.
Right, and it's also like,
There's just so much going on.
Right, and they talked about that, like, it's really dark. Even whatever Andrew did see, it's still really dark. But then the podcast also made the point, it's really, like, for everybody, it's really dark. And so for you to be able to, like, be at a distance that people can't see you and aim in the dark and shoot somebody.
But they were around a fire.
Yeah.
So I wonder, that probably helped. And the fire, you can see people's faces.
Well, he was shot in the back.
Right. I just thought of that as I was saying the faces part.
Yeah. So
maybe he knew who he was hanging out with and saw, like, oh, that's so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so.
Yeah.
This has to be him right there.
And some people think it might be mistaken identity.
Which very well could be.
Right. But
like, oh, I saw your dude over on that street,
Right. But obviously this one single murder was not at the
top of the
priority list given all of the other things going on during this night. Alex Hortis said, quote, I don't think the police, really the NYPD, it's fair to say, really had any kind of major effective enforcement ability against the mafia as a whole in the 1970s. Mob-related homicides were kind of notorious for how difficult they were to solve for various reasons, for obvious reasons. People didn't want to talk. Even the best police officer would have had a very hard time getting a witness to talk if they thought it was mob-related.
I get that. Because the mob at that time, too, weren't they didn't they have their hands kind of everywhere? Like, so, the police department and this and this.
The point of this specific episode for their podcast is, like, the culture of, keeping your mouth shut and not saying anything because you're afraid to say something.
Is their podcast like an episodic one is it like their whole season is one case?
No.
Or is it each episode is a case?
So their seasons do have a focus. So like this season is the 1970s. And they cover like cases that have been forgotten.
Interesting.
So I'm not 100% sure if it's like all unsolved or if it's just like ones that were very impactful. So like this one is the only homicide that happened the entire New York City blackout, which is kind of crazy if you think about it.
It is, yeah.
And it still hasn't been solved. And so they kind of were going to the like, okay, well, how was it investigated? Which is why they were trying to see the police records. But it's like, everyone's also saying if it was mob related, those were already so difficult. And then on top of the fact that there was no power for 25 hours.
Right.
It's, you're not really going to get anywhere, even if you're asking people, and so they're kind of alluding to this makes the most sense. And they brought in the experts to kind of explain what the culture is like. And, to kind of give an explanation as to why we most likely won't ever truly hear from the people unless the people they're afraid of die.
Yeah. Or I wouldn't even think locked up because you can still talk to like the outside world that way.
Although I don't know how big the mafia is still a thing
no
in New York at this point.
I also don't want to look up the answer for that.
No.
So we're just gonna forever wonder.
Yeah. Claire and Rachel asked Hortis why people would have been so tight-lipped during the time of the murder, and he told them, quote, they were ruthless, they were bloodthirsty, and sometimes just outright psychotic. Extremely violent people, the mafia. I think the biggest common theme was the use of fear and coercion to frighten the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Given the anonymous calls and people still being hesitant to share information for fear of what could happen to them, it's safe to say that this case, being tied to the mob, is highly probable. Dominic Siscone's case is still unsolved to this day, and if anyone has any information, they are encouraged to call 1-800-577-TIPS. And that is the case of Dominic Siscone.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like if anything's related to the mob, people just kind of steer clear of it.
Well, and it's an Italian neighborhood.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
It's very big on family and
trust, loyalty.
The sister was even saying, and I didn't include everything that this podcast included in there because I'm like, I don't want to make this podcast and this episode sound like the one that's already been done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get that.
You know, and they included a lot of other information in there, like that kind of just ties everything up really nicely. One of the things that they did talk about was the sister had said that their mom had like even connections with people and was asking the neighborhood what had happened and like what people had heard. And I guess her grandmother had some sort of store, some sort of something. And, you know, it'd be a normal store in the front. And then you go to the back and there's, you know, a bar and a poker table and
that's kind of fun.
All things. And so essentially it being, you know, even their own family had some connections to who knows.
Right.
I forget what article it was in, but one of the sources said, oh, it was something about like, you know, the Italian neighborhood where, you know, every grandma is sitting out on the stoop. And so they see everything that happens, but they don't know anything that happened.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't know nothing.
Oh, yeah.
About
I have no
nothing.
idea what happened.
Yeah. Which, I mean, given what is probable of what was going on in that area at the time.
Environment. Yeah.
And it was interesting because I read the transcript mostly because I'm like, okay, if I can do that, then it's easier for me to put it more so into my own words.
Yes.
Because I'm taking it from writing versus listening to what someone's saying.
Yep. No, I agree. I like finding the transcripts.
Yeah. They're very, very good. They went to the scene, like where it happened, and are obviously talking about what they see because it's a podcast. And it's apparently so different, obviously, if they're $1 million homes.
Right.
You know, so just kind of getting a feel for it. And one of the girls was calling all of the people whose names they found that matched the sister to try to get her on the phone.
Doing their due diligence.
Yeah. And they like play the recording of the girl like calling people over and over again. And, you know, missing. I feel so bad for this woman. One of her other brothers, so not Andrew, but Joe, he's the other one. He died in like 1984.
Oh.
Didn't say why. And then Andrew also died early on, like early 2000s, I think.
Oh my God.
And then their mom in like 2012. So she's pretty much the only one left that would have known her brother.
Wow.
Yeah, like her whole family's gone.
That's sad.
It is very sad. So even the Charles Skoll guy, you know, he was like, he said at the end too, I hope this podcast maybe brings attention to it again.
Yeah, shines light on it.
Yeah, and gets people like talking about it and things like that, because the podcast aired in 2021. The stuff from like the New York Post was 2017, which is 40 years later. I did find one that said 45, which means I knew it was from this year, but I wasn't going to pay for a New York Times subscription. So it was interesting because you have the one from 1997, which the only reason that popped up, the only reason this got brought to light again was because a reporter happened to call to ask about the blackout, not even specifically this case.
Yeah.
Just like, what are things that happened at the and this police officer, he was like, oh, I don't know, let me go check. And then he found it.
Wow.
And like, that was it. And then 40 years later, here's the anniversary again. Oh, local police are interested
again. And then the 40-year anniversary passes and it's just still how it is.
Yeah.
Wild.
So yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
It is very surprising it was the only one that happened.
I know. I thought that was like, that kind of is what grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, how?
And when you were talking about it too, it just kept reminding me of The Purge.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there are no rules. I mean, there are rules, but like, you know.
That's kind of what it seemed to be almost alluding to was
The Purge.
So yeah, you should check out these girls' podcasts. And kind of, you know, it felt like it was kind of similar to our vibe, like looking at things that people have forgotten.
Right, like the things that people don't really know about.
Right.
Like the lesser known crimes and the lesser known things.
But are actually quite impactful for, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
I'm calling Mom after this to ask her about the subway thing, to see if what I found matches what she was telling me about.
Because did hers happen during the blackout?
No, but all she told me was that she remembered that there was this shooting like but multiple shootings on the subway or something like that. And she remembers that she was freaking out because her parents were going into the city and had to, I guess, assuming take the train.
Yeah.
And my mom was like freaking out that like something was going to happen. But I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, if she was still in New York, that earliest when she was still in college, and that was the early 80s. And what I found, I think this happened in the early 80s, but I don't know if hers was like in the 70s when she was still in high school.
So was she in New York during the blackout?
She was in Long Island.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild.
So I was going to ask her about it.
So she was in Long Island when the Amityville stuff was happening? Ask her about it.
I mean, she would have been, well, yeah, she would have been 15.
Ask her about it.
Okay. I'll ask.
Cool.
Yeah. I feel like she's going to give me the answer that I predict giving my children the answer to when they ask me about, like, where were you when this happened? I didn't even know that happened.
Right. Yeah. that happened.
Like,
I didn't learn about it till years later.
When I was watching the Boston Marathon documentary on Netflix, I remember it. And I remember hearing about it. And I remember, like, what I was doing, all that kind of good stuff. But there was so much more about it that I'm like, I don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what she remembers, and I'll report back.
Thank you. Please do. Well, this was a good one.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff in New York.
New York.
New York.
I walk and talk and live in New York.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I drink coffee and my dog drinks water.
My aunt is from New Jersey, and she says water. It's like water.
Yeah. My cousins have
Can you go get me some water?
Yeah. My cousins have a thick New Jersey accent. And my mom had to get rid of her accent because she was in school to be a speech pathologist. Oh. So she couldn't, she kind of pronounce her R's.
She can't have, yeah.
So every once in a while, you'll hear something pop out. But my grandma, she was from the Bronx. And she didn't really have much of an accent either, except for a couple of words. Like order. It was not order, it was order. Let's order some food. Every time.
That's very much Joe's family when we go up to visit.
Oh, yeah.
It's, thick Boston accent.
Oh, for sure. Oh, my God. His sister? Whoa.
It's so funny.
They're from Boston.
When I first met Joe, like our very first date, he had only been living in the area for like a year or so at that point. Thick accent.
Really?
I think I remember texting you. I was like, he has such a thick Boston accent.
I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, he did.
I just remember telling you, don't fucking screw it up.
But yeah, he had a thick accent. That was one of the main things I like first noticed.
Well, you know, accents are sexy.
Boston accents. Australian, yes. English, yes. Or Boston.
Unless you're like Ben Affleck or what's the other one? What's his friend?
I don't know.
Oh my God. Matthew
McConaughey?
No.
Damon?
Yes. But from like the 90s?
Yeah.
That works. Or Matthew McConaughey. Oh my God. I could listen to him speak for hours.
Yes.
Like just the southern, it's like smooth.
Black molasses.
Oh God. It just.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah. From wherever you are.
From wherever
you are and whatever you sound like.
Please follow us on all the things, rate and review us on all the things, send us an email, all that good stuff.
And if you have any interesting facts about your state, maybe it's specifically about your hometown, and you want to include it on like the posts that I've been doing for the weird facts and the laws and the just unique things about your state that might not be included like in our state facts, you know, kind of like this show, finding the unique gems that maybe nobody knows about.
Yes.
Then message us on anything.
Yeah.
Instagram or email us and we'll
try to include it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
As always.
So stay scary.
Stay safe.